One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Delusions of Grandeur. I'm your host, David Strege, and here in the room with me, I have Brandon.
Hey.
And Jake tonight for this martial arts double feature. We've been planning this discussion for quite some time. Finally, we had the time to do it. So the first of the two is a completely different animal than the second one. So why don't we get that one out of the way? It is directed by Yan Ping Shu and written by Sin Wai, screenplay-wise. But it stars Jackie Chan. Well, all over the cover of this thing. It's
quote unquote stars.
Name all over it. And he's not one of the main stars, but he just pops up here and there in the film. But anyways, so I'm just.
Well, you should probably note that, spoiler alert.
Yeah,
he does actually play a pivotal role in the narrative. It's just. It takes a while for that to happen.
Yeah.
So in any case, it was filmed in 1983. And let me just read the IMDb synopsis here. So a force of loners and fighters is put together to try to and rescue generals that are captured by the Japanese and save the war effort with the promise of gold or pardon from past crimes. So basically, to me, this is like Dirty Dozen and and should I say Ghost of Mr. Chicken put together?
Now, yeah, I would say it's kind of like it's kind of like a group of Chinese filmmakers who are still hopped up on having watched House a few times too many. Decided to take some acid and then remake The Dirty Dozen or Kelly's Heroes. Take your pick.
Yeah.
So in the very beginning,
and it's almost that good.
In the very beginning, we have apparently 4 generals from, was it the U.S. or was it Japan that these generals were stolen?
Japanese, because it's a Chinese film in the 80s. The Japanese are the bad guys.
So they were generals from around the world, right? So they were supposed to be generals from around the world. Did you happen to notice that one of their names was, in fact, Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah, that was the American general. And there was a British general, an American, a Frenchman. Was the fourth one Chinese? I never really figured out the fourth one.
I couldn't tell you. Yeah.
Neither could I. But in any case, apparently these generals were captured, and a task force was supposed to be put together to go and rescue them for a considerable amount of money, supposedly. So we have a different group of characters. The first character that we see is Old Son. He's singing this "Ooh La La" song. Exactly kind of kooky song he's singing, but it seems to be funky, and I don't know why, but I get a kick out of the. They're sitting in this restaurant and they're going from side to side singing with this song.
You skipped an important part, though. There's the part where they, while planning the task force, they go through all the people that they want to have on the team. They show up a picture of James Bond. He's on mission in Africa. They show Snake Plissken. Hasn't he been dead for 3 years? And they show Rocky Balboa. Oh, he's a civilian. We can't use him. Just shamelessly using all these famous characters. And then they actually bring in, I think Don Wen was the character played by Jimmy Wang Yu, is brought in. And he puts together this task force one at a time, starting with Old Son. And I just love that sequence. I just love the brazenness of stealing.
Well, that's why I say that this is kind of a different animal film.
Right.
The first time watch, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But if you watch it a second time, it kind of grows on you to me, because it doesn't know exactly what it needs, what it wants, and what it plans on being. And it kept me guessing when I first saw this on VHS in grainy quality. So,
not much better quality on the DVD.
No, it's not much better quality.
No.
I'm hoping that someone actually finds the original
Right.
to this film and at least puts it to a nice little Blu-ray package.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see this cleaned up, just so I could be able to understand it a little bit better.
This would be a wonderful banner child for the Tinfoil collection, I think.
Yes. Actually, you know what's odd is that I was reminded of The Wizard of Oz, oddly enough, when I watched this film. And I don't know why, but it always comes to mind now that I've seen this, I think, for the third time. And
third time? Why did you watch it a second time? Oh yeah, that's right. You watched it a second time once you got it on DVD, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I watched it the first time when you sent me a link to watch it for the discussion.
That was really
Then we were planning on doing the discussion a few months later, so I watched it a second time. And then I watched it the third time on the DVD as we prepared for tonight.
Okay.
So,
now that you've said when you watched it, what were your first impressions of the film as a whole?
I lost Jackie Chan with his overalls, but I thought it was definitely quite the drug trip of a movie. It was hard to follow on the grainy quality picture. The DVD cleaned it up slightly from what I watched it.
The main thing is it was on a bigger screen, which helped a little.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was definitely something, and I will give it that, and I won't forget it. So probably those are the two big things that I took away from it.
Right. It is fairly memorable.
Well, so kind of like Dirty Dozen, it seems like this General Don Yen goes about and finds and either bribes some of the people to come along or captures them. It's like the Old Son guy. He was kind of kooky, but he was caught with money, and I guess he got signed on. And then we see the scene where I think Indiana Jones pretty much copied it from this film. I swear to God, the drinking game.
No, Indiana Jones came first.
Indiana Jones came first?
Yeah.
Huh.
Beat it off Indiana Jones, more than likely.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised. This movie was pretty shameless in the amount of things that they took from the public.
Well, in any case, for some reason, I like that scantily clad woman that they were undressing with their weapons. For some reason, I like that aspect of the film. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm shameless, but
That part they did not do in Indiana Jones.
No, they did not. But ultimately, after the drinking game, there was a guy who stood up and realized that the female, which she goes by the name of Lily, who is played by Bridget Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
And she is ultimately like the femme fatale in the film.
Right.
She is like she's like the woman who I would want to be my woman if I really had to think of it.
Lin was actually a pretty big name in Chinese action films at this point in time. She was arguably the biggest name, other than maybe Jimmy Wang Yu, that was actually a star and not just being marketed as the star.
True enough.
Yeah. Of course, her actually joining the team had an interesting bent to it, where she's reunited with her man and basically beats him half to death for running out on her over and over again. And
really,
he's like,
look alike.
and he's like, "I'll never leave you again." And the other guy shows up with money. Bye.
I'm gone.
And then I love that part. She like infiltrates the camp, kidnaps them, proves that she could kick all their asses, and then he lets slip how much they're paying him, and she's like, "Really? Oh, count me in."
Right. And then let's see. Well, we have General and Stone. Who are interesting characters. They're like the Chinese Irishmen.
I was very puzzled by this. Are they supposed to be Scottish? Are they supposed to be Canadian? Are they? What are they supposed to be? They're clearly played by Chinese actors.
They
reminded me of like Stan and Ollie or Abbott and Costello or something of that nature. Except,
and one of them is wearing a kilt.
Stone definitely had the scream down pat, the girlish scream.
So which one was the one that wore the Tin Man outfit?
I think that must have been Stone.
That was Stone, played by Shlubu Lia. That's what his name was. But he was very high-voiced, at least in the dub.
And then we got the guy who I guess is supposed to be the kind of sort of the Yankee character, Grease Lightning.
Yeah, he was in some kind of a prison camp. He got out and didn't escape. Done when. And of course, there is also Jackie Chan's character, which Jackie Chan plays Sammy, who is evidently trying to also manipulate a fight in some way, shape, or form by having another wrestler take the place of the sumo wrestler that he was supposed to fight.
Well, I think he was more the front person and his sister was the manipulator. And that was Emily, right?
Yeah.
So basically they're a brother-sister team of con people. And it's interesting because they're introduced during this series of introductions of all the others, but Don Wen doesn't show up and get them, and you're like, okay, so they randomly inserted Jackie Chan into the film. But then later they show up again, and it's like, okay.
They show up like 4 fucking times, you know?
Yeah.
It's like they couldn't stay away from the set. I almost feel like Jackie Chan's character was almost ad-libbed.
Probably.
Well, the way they presented it seemed more like they were following in the background in order to jump in times of danger. Which makes sense a lot of the time if you think about the first time that he appears with the group. and then kind of disappears and then reappears at the end to help them fight the Nazis. But
were they Nazis?
yeah.
At what point did they find out
last
about
ones?
money?
Yes. That's a good question. I know they knew about it when they got to the part where they were fighting off the Nazis because they discovered it then.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been around otherwise.
I think it was after the haunted house, though, because they weren't there for that.
So once these guys got together, they were they had banded together to try to find their way to Luxembourg, right? That's where they were supposed to be going.
I think the generals were being transported there or something along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, they got waylaid by these hooded Amazonian women who seemed to know their acrobatic way with those. I don't know what would you call those things that shot out the streamers.
Weapon. I don't know, what is that weapon. I'm sure there is I'm sure it's a traditional Chinese thing. It was and I actually thought that the fights that they did there were probably some of the cooler fights in the in the movie, just because it had a lot of an elaborate nature to it that was kind of missing from some of the other fight scenes.
I like how Lily ended up once again coming back and being the only one who could beat anyone's ass. You know, she kept having that quality about her to come and save their butts. In fact, that's not the only time that she did that, because after they were somewhat separated and they went to the haunted house, they were waylaid by the spirits of the house, and she came back and pretty much bombed the shit out of the creatures anyways. But let's get back to
more proof that they watched House before they did.
So,
and then of course the Amazon leader was a dude in a tuxedo.
Yeah. He was a little.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. I mean, he had all those. He had all those women to himself, and you got somebody threatens him.
I think he was supposed to be sort of a knockoff of Bond in a way.
I think so too. Because he was well dressed, well dressed for that atmosphere.
Right.
Like he had just come from from a charity event or something like that.
Yes.
And flown in express just to be at this point.
Yes.
Or maybe he was the drug lord. I don't know.
Who may have flown in from a charity event? You never know. Anyway, yeah. So maybe, he may have been the supplier that hooked the filmmakers up, and they gave him a role as a bonus. No.
Could have been. You never know, with this film. So after the Amazonian action scenes, which actually were quite extraneous, were those their bombs that they brought along, or that they?
That's a good question.
Dude went over to that truck and found like all these bombs that you could set like underneath shit. So to me, all of a sudden the bombs were there. I didn't notice any bombs when they were in the Jeep, but this was an actual like truck. They just so happened to be there.
Maybe they found them on the ground.
No, they were inside the truck. They were inside the truck that he went to.
I remember them finding them. I just don't. I don't remember much about them. The movie kind of ran into would run into one scene to another.
There were parts
But
I had trouble remembering too.
There were memorable areas. Like I remember very well the introduction to the women's village.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember Jackie Chan's first appearance with the group. But that's all I really remember about that. Then, of course, the haunted house scene is probably the one I remember the most.
That was one of the things that I remembered the most too. Out of the film, how the fuck do you put a haunted house in the middle of this fucking film? You know, I mean, why would you? But they do.
Why not?
Because they were high.
Well, what's interesting is I like that entire sequence. In fact, that's probably that entire haunted house sequence is probably my favorite scene in the film for some reason. First of all, when they're sleeping, you get the Uri that kind of bounces along, and Stone, of course, he's fucking awake, and he he screamed like a little girl for that. What do you think of that that particular Uri that shows up, that bounces through the room?
Well, I am, well, as I can say, I'm lost like most of the time I was in the particular one. And I think the same thing. Yeah, that was when the guy got out of the coffin and just left.
Yeah.
I believe that's what they do. It's not a traditional... Shoot, you should be speaking to this, Jacob.
I don't remember
Japanese.
That scene. The
Japanese.
Japanese.
They were sleeping. They were all sleeping in the room, and then out of the coffin jumps this Uri, which is a Japanese female ghost that bounces, and it bent down to look at them. She turned her head to the side, kind of eerily, and just kept going on down the line, looking and trying to make sure that they were all asleep.
Okay.
It was a really weird. And then the next sequence is when dude goes down to the cards. The dudes with the cards, where they cheat, and the one guy's head comes over, tries to look at his shit, and then the next guy, his whole entire hand shoots underneath the table and extends arm to try to pick up pieces and look at them. And then the third guy, dude, the general is like, well, these guys aren't human, are they? And the guy's like, well, let me look around. And his head spins around.
Well, that's the thing, is it's weird that he sees the other ghostly things and it doesn't bother him at all. But then he sees the other thing and then he's like panicking and stuff like that.
Right. And then, of course, the other guy, he goes into a room and there's this beautiful woman. And for some reason, that music that seems to be going on through that whole entire sequence, it's like two women going, you know, kind of like that. It's kind of eerie.
Sounds like it. Now, random story bit though. I feel like we jumped past, but remind me, this is after Don Wynn's disappearance, right?
This is after whose disappearance?
Don Wynn.
Yeah, this is after
Yeah.
his.
Because he disappeared a while back, I think.
Because didn't he fall down while the Amazons were chasing him or something like
Something
that?
like that. Yeah, he
Dude that was in the water.
something happened during a chase, and he was gone, and they all thought he was dead. Yeah. So, yeah.
Like I said, this
So-
one kind of had a presentation like a dream, or maybe it was because I was falling asleep at parts, but it had this quality to where you kind of floated from scene to scene, and to me there were parts that just felt missing. And like I say, I think it's not because the parts weren't there. It's just it was in such a way that I wasn't paying enough attention in between these transitions.
Do you feel like the film was choppy?
A little.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely choppy.
So whoever edited the film might have been either cutting too much or left too much in.
Could be.
Yeah, maybe.
Like the sequence with all the weird, creepy nighttime sequence with all the Nazi figures riding on top of muscle cars. That was just weird on multiple levels.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
Yeah, only a little bit anachronistic there. Just a little.
So ultimately, after the haunted house, what happens from there?
Oh,
Or
I
do
would
you guys-
think they were starting to go to. Didn't they start to go from there and transition to the big fight scene at the end where they discover the money?
I think so.
They get Jackie Chan's character kind of joins back up with them, with his sister. They are confronted by the Nazis that are there, and the Nazis basically say, "You give us our money." And then
we won't kill you.
yeah, and then they say, "Oh, we'll come back tomorrow. If you're still here, well, you're dead." And they decide we're going to prep and try and pull an A-team and see if we can get our plan to come together.
So they decided to do a last Alamo effort.
Right.
Well, they wanted that money, which I
And
guess I
there
can
were
understand. It was a lot of
no
money.
survivors.
Hey,
There were survivors.
$500,000 went a long way back then.
Yeah, well,
Dude, I could use that right now.
Yeah, I could too. So yeah, so once they come back, yeah, everyone's all on edge, and people start shooting, and people start dying,
And
and
it starts looking like a Dukes of Hazzard reunion has come back.
a little bit.
Where all these Charger-looking cars end up ramming the place.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
And then, of course, Jackie Chan ends up having a sword fight with Don Wen.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Who you find out is still alive and had planned to sell them all down the river and take the money for himself, which is like such a lovely thought.
Yeah, best laid plans.
Yeah. And I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you and your damn kids.
But they do rescue the generals in the end. But leave them there.
After, yes. Because I was not kidding when I said there were no survivors, technically. Because technically, Emily, who is shot, and Sammy were not part of the strike force.
Do you know
That's true.
They're not really there to do anything other than steal the money. So, yeah, they kind of end up just taking the money and running.
So, I didn't actually get to you, Jake. What were your thoughts about this film on a whole?
Well, I mean, the first time I saw it, I thought, what the hell is this? But I was moderately amused by parts of it, and I remembered it being weird and crazy. And second time around, I enjoyed it more, but I still was like, what the hell is this?
It started to grow on you, didn't it?
It does a little bit. And actually, we haven't even talked about, and I'm going to circle back and talk about one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is right at the very, very beginning. And that's where you got all the generals in the war room, and they got this big map of Canada and what looked like graphics of Canada surrounded by the Japanese or something. And so you have these generals all in this room, and they're arguing over their intelligence, like not their personal intelligence, which is crap, but like their national intelligence. Like I think the British one is something like, well, our intelligence shows that the Japanese are here, and et cetera, et cetera. And the American one's like, well, our intelligence shows this. The Japanese are here, and And then there's one guy's like, no, the Japanese are here. And they're all like, no. He's like, they are here. And he points across the room, and the Japanese army is in the room ready to capture them. I just love that. I was like, bureaucracy in action. I love it. It gives new meaning to army intelligence, doesn't it?
Which means by the time the intelligence of the world gathers together and tries to figure out what the hell is going on, the Japanese are going to kill the fuckers anyways, eh?
Yeah, but it was very interesting. And honestly, if it had maintained that satirical edge throughout and not gone off into that shit craziness, I might have thought a little more of the film overall. But I enjoy some batshit crazy once in a while, so
Yeah, I think that the film, if it wasn't as crazy as it was, I don't think it would be very memorable. It would have just been another one of those mid-80s martial arts films. I think making it as weird as it was is probably the one reason why. Because otherwise, I'll admit, I was kind of bored by the last scene of the movie where they were doing the big fight with the Nazis.
Oh, come on.
And,
you didn't like the Japanese's version of Roger Corman's Death Race?
To me, it got a bit repetitive, but at the same time, I look at it as a whole, though, it is a movie that is memorable because it is so strange.
Right.
Like I say, if they'd gotten rid of all of the craziness, you would just be left with a basic movie with a plot taken from something that is better done elsewhere.
Well, just think. Remember that Japanese film where the head was flying around that we watched. House.
House wouldn't be as memorable if it wasn't so crazy. But crazy in a different way. But I still had some really fun parts to it.
I like to think that this doesn't really know what it wants to be, and I think that that's the wild and craziness of it. And for some reason, even though I know it's not a cinematic masterpiece, Because it's not. I think this is one of those films that you can truly call one of those really, really bad films, but it's so good that it's bad. You know, I mean, to me, this is a classic example of one of those. I guess I don't know. I just get a kick out of bits and pieces of the film every time I watch it, and each time I watch it, I realize that Stone and the General, those two just crack me up. What they do to each other and what they do to the others. I mean, there's some slapstick humor that is missed in that. Like he accidentally slaps Lily once, and she slaps him right back. And right after that, Stone ends up pulling old Son's pants down, and it's fucking hilarious what he does. So to me, I'm glad that it kept some humor throughout the whole thing, you know.
Oh, the exploding cigar gag never gets old.
But in any case, is there anything else that you think that we may have missed from this particular film? I personally thought I enjoyed the music behind the haunted house scene, at least. Or the sound.
Didn't they rip off the score from Halloween for much of the film?
No, that was actually in Master of the Guillotine.
Oh, right. Sorry. I got it mixed up. We probably should get to that one if we want to talk about it.
Well,
definitely.
Yeah, that's true. We better move on to that one. So,
what did we think about the effects of this film?
Effects?
Yeah, the effects.
Serviceable. Not great.
I think the effects, it's one of the times where the graininess of the picture actually helps.
Okay. Well, to me, I thought the best effects were during the Amazonian destruction of its village. And then, of course, whenever you saw someone actually hit someone with a bullet. And for some reason, I love the guns that just shot like millions dead, like instantly.
Yeah.
They all dropped like flies when they only went halfway around. But in any case, did anyone have a favorite scene before we moved on?
Mine's tied between that whole restaurant scene and the haunted house. I admit they're both pretty fun scenes.
Yeah.
And you said that your favorite scene, Jacob, was the war scene where they were talking about intelligence.
I think probably between that one and the scene where they were going through all the people they wanted in the unit. And I do think that musical scene in the restaurant was pretty fun too. That was pretty good.
Did you understand any of what they were singing about, or I don't know if you know anything about the Japanese language.
Well, Japanese language means nothing in this instance. But seriously, it's a Chinese film. But I don't think. Also, I watched the dub. So did they dub the song? I don't remember.
No, they did not.
Okay,
I wish they would have.
Yeah.
Because then I would have. They should at least go and update it with at least maybe some subtitles, at least for some of it.
Right.
But in any case, so that film was filmed in 1983. Moving on to Master of the Guillotine. So this is in fact a sequel to a 1971 film called The One-Armed Boxer.
Mm-hmm.
And it is directed by Jimmy Wang Yu. Filmed in 1976. And let me just read the information for this particular film. After his students are killed by the one-armed boxer, a vengeful and blind kung fu expert travels to a village where a martial arts contest is being held and vows to behead every one-armed man he comes across. So, first impression. Jacob, why don't you tell me about your first impressions of this film?
First impression, it was interesting. I was also disappointed by the visual quality of this DVD, so I wonder if this one could be cleaned up at some point. But it was a little cheesy. Some of the effects were really cheesy. But there was actually some good fighting in it. And overall, I kind of liked tournament. To me, it felt like a tournament episode of a series. You know what I mean? Like, and I enjoy those where you get random people paired up together and see how they deal with each other's
anger issues.
Anger issues,
like
yes.
The world tournament.
Sort of, yeah. I like those kind of things. So it's more fun when you know a little bit about a lot of the characters, and but in this case, it was still fun. I kind of like what Brandon said with the other one. I felt like this one started to drag by the end. I felt like it ran longer than it needed to. But overall, it wasn't bad.
Okay. Brandon, what is your first impression of this film?
My first impression is that somebody types really loud because I hear it over my headphones. I know it ain't me because I'm not typing on anything. But
it might have been me. Sorry.
The film itself, this was my first time seeing it. And I was glad I was able to get that. I felt like the visual quality was much better than Fantasy Mission Force. I mean, that's not really saying much, but
No.
The sound quality wasn't terrible. Now I watched the English dub, so it may have differed. I know you watched the Mandarin.
I did.
So I don't know whether that changed the sound quality or not, because I felt like the sound quality on the dub was pretty darn good. I actually really enjoyed it. It was a pretty fun overall. Oh, there were parts of it that I agreed kind of dragged for a little bit, but I did as I said, it's seeing how the different characters interact with each other in battle was kind of cool.
And as far as I didn't really go over my. I'm going to go over both my first impression on the first film, and then I'm going to go into my first impression on this film. My first impression of the first film that we did, Fantasy Mission Force, was from a VHS. On a VHS quality. So to me, first time I watched it, it was so weird I had to watch it again. It was given to me by a friend in the neighborhood, and it never left my side, at least until I sold it for my DVD collection. But I ultimately ended up getting it on DVD, and it's been part of my collection ever since. This particular film, the one-armed, this film has two other titles to it. It's called Master of the Flying Guillotine, but it is also called the One Arm Boxer 2 and the One Arm Boxer versus the Flying Guillotine. So it's been known by many different titles, and this was actually the first time that I actually had sat down and watched it in its entirety, and I enjoyed it. I've seen quite a few martial arts films over time, which has been the extent of much of my Japanese filmography, because I enjoy the drive-in feel. So whenever I came across a martial arts film, I picked it up. And this was one of them that I went and tracked down because I heard so much about it. It's supposedly the holy grail of the kung fu movies, which is saying a lot about it. So, but let's dig into this film. So, from the very beginning, we see this character by the name of Feng Sheng Wuqi, who is played by Kang Chin. It was this old man who seems to have a beard and long white hair, and we find out that he is an assassin that was the master of two other assassins. Called the Lamb Brothers, I think they were called. But in the previous film, the one-armed boxer had actually killed his apprentices, so he is back for revenge. Meanwhile, the one-armed boxer Lu Ti Lung, played by the director, Jimmy Wang Yu, is in charge of some students in a dojo, which, yeah, I know what it's called. It's a dojo. But while he is teaching his young students, some of his young students come in and tell him about a tournament that is about to happen. This is where I'm going to have one of you take up. What do you think of these beginning scenes here?
Well, I mean, with the old man, it's not so much of just other than just setting him up, as in he's coming out of his retirement to seek revenge. Shoot, I didn't even realize the old man was the bad guy at the very beginning of the film. I was like, oh, maybe he's the hero.
They do introduce him somewhat sympathetically.
Yeah, there is kind of a narration to this whole story, at least at first.
Because his students were the ones that got killed. Now, was now you say this was originally the One-Armed Boxer 2. Did the original story prior to this take place in the One-Armed Boxer 1? Where he took out the guys?
It starts off where the other left off, because you see some flashbacks of the fight scene from the original one. Now, I have not seen the One-Armed Boxer, so I don't know. I don't know as far as to the storyline. But what I do know is that he killed his two apprentices dead.
That would be interesting to have seen the... It would have been interesting to have seen the original.
I was thinking we could definitely hunt down the other one and go on about that one eventually, too. Go backwards and that one.
Yeah, since I didn't know much about the guys, I felt more for the old man at first, and I was still trying to feel like, who's this one-armed boxer? What kind of bad guy is he?
He's not necessarily a bad guy. up to as a hero by other people. Apparently,
he's a good guy, but I didn't realize that at the beginning. I was thinking he was the bad guy. Way of looking at it.
Very true. Without having seen the first one, you can't really. Going into it, you can't really say whether he's the good guy or bad guy at first, because in a sense you kind of see the mythos of the old man with his two gods that they're talking about, and it's coming out like Rafiki, in a sense. His jumping out of the frickin' house like he did.
I mean, yep.
Oh, let's see.
That's my thoughts.
Then, of course, now he was supposedly invited to the display of the tournament, which is very much set up like a gladiator type setting. Okay.
Oh yeah. Shoot, Gladiax, almost. Just with all the spikes and taking the tournament where they're just like they're up on the poles over all the spikes on the ground. So if one of them falls, they end up getting impaled. Yeah, that's some real high charged crap right there going on.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that each fight was actually different than the next. Instead of seeing the same fights sequences between the three, and there were some characters that kind of stood out during the fight scenes. Did anyone have any favorite characters that they may have liked?
Well, I'll say this: they did a good job of showing off two of the one semi-villain and one actual villain during that particular scene. And if watching them in battle and doing what they do, it kind of it kind of did give you a good feel for who they were. I mean, the Japanese guy who kind of cheated, but I guess you can't really cheat in this particular one. And then, of course, the other guy.
Well, I guess if there was a cheating, it was he presented himself one way and then was, he went by the name Win Without a Knife Yakima. He used a knife. How clever.
Yes.
Or the guy who I swear to God, he looked like Raiden from Mortal Kombat.
Wasn't that the one we were just talking about?
Yeah, with the Japanese guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, you had the cute daughter of the guy running the tournament.
So the three guys who supposedly were helping out the assassin were a Thai boxer, a yoga master, and a Kobo Jutsu user.
The Thai boxer was an interesting character. He came on very rude, very I don't give a damn about anyone else, but a very competent fighter. He was around for a while. Yeah. And then I guess the yoga master, is the one with the
arms.
Yes.
The Indian.
The Dazin character.
Yeah, pretty much Dalsum.
Street fighter.
Which I would not be surprised if he was not based in some way, shape, or form off of this character.
It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me at all either.
I mean, shoot, if Tarantino enjoyed this film so much and was inspired by it, that a lot of the Capcom people enjoyed this film.
Well, I certainly enjoyed the fight scenes dealing with the Indian guy the most. Besides the fight scenes between the one-armed boxer and the guillotine assassin. For some reason, I liked the fact that, even though there were moments where you saw that the hands were fake when they were reaching up, they're only moments though. But for some reason, he was able to make them very much look like they were being used in martial arts style, in whatever jujitsu or kung fu that he might have known. For some reason, when he was tumbling on the floor with the one-armed boxer, he was very agile with those extendable arms. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I think, and that they did. I mean, jumping on the chairs and doing that when they were teaching. A lot of this many years ago, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much. I think that was one of the reasons why I think if I had seen more of these, though, I probably would have liked Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon more, because that's really the kind of that they did. That sort of, jumping on the wires and over the top martial arts. That's really unbelievable to really get a feel for it.
Well, yeah, because he took the stones out of that fucking basket, and he was on his tippy toes on that basket, walking around it. So to me, that was almost unbelievable.
Well, the whole scene of him, what was the third stage, I think, was where he ran up the wall and was standing on the ceiling. And I was definitely just thinking about the I was definitely thinking about the early scenes in Naruto where they teach where Kakashi's teaching them chakra control. That was definitely what I was thinking there.
What I was thinking there is, I don't know if any of you have seen the new Adventures of Pippi Longstocking.
Well, they did the glue on the shoes or whatever it was.
Yeah. When she walked up the walls, that's what made me think of for some reason. I don't know why. But in any case, was there? So the one-armed boxer ended up setting traps for each of these, shall I say, henchmen that apparently this assassin has acquired from the fighters at the gladiator ring, per se. And while he was watching a man chop an axe on a thing of bamboo, he got the idea to use bamboo against the assassin. I thought that was actually a really well thought out process.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
It was interesting.
Well, was the guy's, sound was the guy's main weakness because he was blind. So he was using sound as one of his primary ways, and feel really as his primary ways of attacking. So what's the fight against the Master of the Flying Guillotine? The bamboo was just the beginning. of formulating to finally defeat him at the end.
True. Mm-hmm. What did you guys think of the female daughter of the tournament's leader, the guy who had evidently put all this fighting thing together?
Well, she was very cute, and she was a pretty good fighter. I was puzzled. I must have missed something, or it was a flaw in the script. I was puzzled how rapidly and without question she joined the side of the one-armed boxer. And, you know, that seemed very sudden.
As far as that can be explained, I have a feeling that that Kojutsu fighter, the one with the knife, he tried to say something to the fact that, well, if you want, I can teach you what I know, and you might have the skills. You're very talented. It's very possible it could have been that much that much of a creepiness to him that she might have been like as soon as she saw the one-armed boxer, kind of like, well, I'll just go with you.
See, that's my thought though. Is the one dude was so friggin' creepy. It was so obvious what he was after that for her to go unquestioningly with someone else just made no sense to me. But I guess if you look at it as a older mindset, it makes more sense. I guess.
Well, there could also have been a racial component to it as well, because
that might have been a big part.
There is an innate distrust of the Japanese that flows through, with good reason, flows through so I don't know. It was I mean, I think that there could have been that, plus she was a townie, he was a townie, Sure. Each other, or at least we're familiar with each other, at least because they were in the same area.
Possible.
Yeah, that's very possible. So, is there anything else that we wanted to talk about? Like, were there any fight sequences that you guys might have liked more than the other?
Well, I like the last. Yeah. The fight, as video games are wont to do.
He just fell off, huh?
Does he? No, he's back.
Okay.
He had utilized the coffins and and that whole coffee shop that was rented out.
That was cool.
Yeah. That was kind of fun, especially when it reminded me of like the original Django. A little bit, just a little bit. Because he carried that coffin to a T. But then, of course, that guillotine kind of took and destroyed most of the other coffins.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and he gave that great big stack of coins to the coffin shop keeper, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, sure, you can use the shop." But I'm sitting here thinking, did he also pay him for damages? Because I don't think that stack of coins would cover it.
No, I don't think so. But what I did like was the menagerie
What
scene.
you don't know is that was
where,
the.
Well, huh?
What was it?
Well, you had a thought, and then you stopped in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You started talking about the menagerie scene.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The menagerie. The menagerie scene. It was interesting because he opened up the door and this flock of birds just flew out at him because you know that assassin is blind. So when he's fighting, he's listening to everything. In fact, there was a scene or two where you actually saw his ear wiggle, which was kind of funny. Just wiggling back and forth, just funky as all hell.
Actually, I have an idea for the third. The third film must be the guy who owned the coffin making business, and he's seeking or destroying all of his.
Right.
I can't really see him winning, though.
Right.
So maybe he'll hire a succession. Actually, there you go. You get a straight up comedy where he hires a succession of assassins, and each one keeps failing. And
oh, he hires the fantasy mission force, and it crosses over.
Of course, this one did. It did have a pretty long reach, and not just that one yoga dude. Because again, I agree. There probably was some influence with him and maybe some of the other characters in later like video games and that kind of stuff. And and yes, there is the saying that apparently Tarantino was a fan of the film and that the mace that Gogo Yubari wields in Kill Bill V1 was probably based partly on the guillotine, which is cool because she was a cool character. That was fun.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So. But in any case, what did you got? What did you think about the other traps that he set, that the one-armed man had set for the other fighters?
Well, the one he set that ended up dispatching the TIE fighter was nasty, but it was pretty cool.
Oh, the fire was actually where the fire was all around them and shit.
Right, with the metal floor to the hut, and obviously he was able to control his mental state so that he didn't feel the pain, but the other dude had no control.
Well, and he couldn't escape because of those people on the outside would put through the window. He was motherfucking trapped in that motherfucker.
Yeah, he was pretty stuck.
That was the other thing is the one-armed boxer. He had a lot of assistance from the town. Like I say, he was well liked by most of the people. So the other guys were kind of on their own. against the whole.
Yeah.
They were just tough.
True. They were tough. What did you think about the Raiden guy? And his fight scene.
You talking about the final one with the boxer?
The final one with the boxer before the guillotine fight.
Right. That was interesting. I don't remember that one as well as the others for some reason.
I agree.
Yeah, it didn't.
I feel like it ended quicker.
Yeah, it did kind of end
or
quicker.
anticlimactic.
And it's not really a fight that you're supposed to remember, dudes. Right? Because we're looking out for that big ass scene with the fucking guillotine, you know. So,
right.
But what did you think about the guillotine itself?
Not 100% sure how the mechanics of that are supposed to work. It looked cool.
It's called.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it's supposed to work either, because evidently it's got this long ass chain that pulls the spikes and decapitates people, and yet it looks kind of funky.
Right.
He nails them on the head with it like a hat, and then part of the apparatus slides down over their head around the neck, and he twists it, and it cuts the head off. And it kind of just sucks the head with it, kind of just.
Yeah. At one point,
you know, there's one.
There's one scene where it looks like there's a fishnet that slides down, and in the next scene that decapitates someone, it's not there anymore. So, I don't know what's up with that.
I only have one thing to say to that. Who threw? Really? But you know, but you can have people job decapitating people with the darn hat,
Right.
or even.
I was going to say, I wonder if they borrowed the concept part. I wonder if they partly borrowed the concept from Odd Job.
There is one fight
possible.
scene that I did say, huh, during the tournament that I wanted to go back to, where both of them died.
Yeah,
that was interesting to see, because I mean, it's not often that that in a fight sequence that you get both of them dead entirely at the same at the same moment. So to me, seeing that it's like, well, I guess that
was the big beefy Mongolian dude and the dude with the long hair braid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, he strangled the Mongolian dude with his hair while being stabbed at the same time.
I know.
It was kind of weird.
That had to have been the weirdest death scene that I've ever seen.
And then the announcer was something like, "And the loser is," and something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he expected him to die too. And he's like, take both the winners away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
well, this is a long line of like it. It's just that Chinese kung fu history. As I said, I think as I mentioned, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But I mean, it is very similar in their styles of fighting. Like I say, that bothered me the first time I watched it because I was so used to movies. When it came to that, I was used to the ones that are more realistic in a way. Like a lot of the Bruce Lee movies, they were much more realistic because he actually utilized, well, the martial arts themselves.
I think this one was more of a hybrid. It wasn't full wuxia, but it was like it wasn't full Bruce Lee either. It was somewhere in the middle.
Bruce Lee made a hell of a lot more cat noises anyway, so
yes, there definitely wasn't as much.
His martial arts was a little bit more like the daughter of the the daughter of the tournament leader.
The Eagle Claw School, yeah. She was using those claws too. Actually, that was an amusing fight where she basically used her claws to disrobe the opponent.
Yeah, and he walked away bare-assed.
Right.
That was freaking hilarious. Evidently, he forfeited the fight then.
Yeah.
So there were some moments of humor that I think are missed on some of this, and even though some of the fighting looked kind of corny at times, I think the fight scenes between the opponents, like I said, were different before, but they were actually relatively choreographed to a certain extent, because I do believe that some of that isn't some fakery, isn't play fighting.
Right.
Some of it was actually believable.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, except for the guillotine.
I mean, it wasn't No Last Dragon, but shit.
Right.
It was to me. This wasn't an entertaining film to see. I mean, finally, I got to see this film, and I'm glad that I got to see this film. What about you guys?
Yeah. It's good to
double it up a little bit, with all these horror and Oscars.
Right.
Nation alone has done it, and this film actually set up several films that probably have had Oscar considerations. So, in a way, they do attach to each other, and probably horror consideration as well.
What films do you feel are that this film may have set up?
A lot of Tarantino's work was probably had some basis in that, and he's loved by the Oscars.
Well, yeah, but Kill Bill wasn't exactly embraced the way some of his later films have been.
No, but I think that there's a lot of subtle things that come.
Yeah.
From just a film, from a perspective, I mean, it's that idea of taking some ideas and then utilizing them with other ideas and then coming up with something unique. And Tarantino is all about that. Tarantino is all about taking other ideas and spinning them into something slightly new. And a lot of other martial arts films, I'm sure, also went from this. Came up from
I would say that there are martial arts films, then there are kung fu films, and then of course there are just total samurai films. To me, I would put them into like 3 different genres.
Well, I'd say if you want to really break it, you could probably break it up even more than that. But
yeah, you could.
But martial arts is a broader term. You could incorporate all manner of fight Well,
Steven Seagal.
well, yeah, you could definitely incorporate pretty much his entire filmography if you go as broad as using martial arts. But yeah, kung fu film would be a specific subgroup, and samurai films would be a specific subgroup, definitely, no doubt.
But see, and I'm not even sure I would group samurai films in with them, because samurai films, I would say those and westerns are closer to each other.
Well, you
than martial arts film.
You could say, in a sense, a lot of westerns are also martial arts, but you're thinking more gunplay in that case. Still, technically.
Well, one could say the Dirty Harry is a martial.
Well, again, in the broadest sense, martial arts just refers to the art of combat, pretty much. I mean, in the broadest sense.
Now, you just got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel
actually,
yeah.
You could say that some witty dramas are also martial arts films because they're using martial arts of the mind.
Now you're stretching it. Right?
You see. So, in a way, Downton Abbey is a martial arts film.
Jeez. Still can't believe that got no love at all. But anyway. Wow.
So Aronofsky uses some sort of martial arts on people.
What's up?
I gotta rate it in here anyways. So does anyone have a favorite scene from Master of the Flying Guillotine?
I'm having trouble thinking of a specific one, so I'll just say the tournament generally.
Yeah. I have to say that last fight scene with the one that finally went between the one-armed man and the Master of the Flying Guillotine.
It's hard for me to pick just one because there were several scenes that I actually really liked. For some reason, I like the Indian guy with the extendable arms for some reason. I just liked his. When they first came out, I was like, "Oh my god!" and then when he was able to agilely move them around while he was tumbling on the ground in the fight scene between him and the one-armed man, that kind of somewhat, amazed me because I could tell they were somewhat fake, but yet there was some martial arts agility to those extendable arms. It's like they were perpendicular to the activity of kung fu. But I guess I would have to say that I really liked each and every one of the fight scenes between the opponents in the gladiator scene, because to me, I guess I like gladiator type stuff, like Spartacus type stuff. So
I know kung fu.
So here's a crazy thought, just out of nowhere. We've already established that the guy, the writer, director of the film, when he showed up in Fantasy Mission Force, he had gone bad. So, by extrapolating from there and by that logic, could it be that he is the one-armed man that Dr. Kimball is looking for in The Fugitive?
Yes, The Fugitive, another martial arts film.
Jim Carrey's The Mask. In Jim Carrey's The Mask, he says, "It wasn't me. It was the one-armed man."
Yeah. Well, that was an obvious
one-armed man that he was talking about.
Yeah. Then again,
Well, I
you
mean,
know, Jim Carrey, maybe he did have that. Yeah, you never know. You never know.
In any case, what did we think about the special effects of the film?
they were good for the
Such
time.
as they were. Yeah.
I would have.
They were mostly practical, I'm sure. And
Yeah,
not bad. You know.
There weren't really any CGI effects at this point in time.
Right.
So a lot of it was putting many of these naturalist Japanese people on hooks to carry them around if they needed to float up or jump up or something like that.
Or like the Indian dude carrying, I guess, arm extensions or whatever it was. That
skilled for arms.
Yeah,
something like that.
Something like that.
But they seem. I would like to see like the behind the scenes of what those arms actually look like. if there were some specialists.
Yeah.
But in any case, so Jake, you jumped the gun in the first film and talked about the music of this particular film. It predecessed another film that we know. And it sounds a lot like the score that John Carpenter and his son came up with.
Right. And to be honest, I didn't even hardly notice that. I just know that both films liberally used music that they didn't pay for. And that might end up being one of the reasons why we haven't seen a nice, cleaned up re-release.
Well, I would like to see both of them cleaned up eventually. Just for the sake. I mean, they cleaned up House. Come on now.
Yes, they did.
Well, that one, again, it didn't steal tons of unlicensed music. That is a major sticking point with a lot of physical releases. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Probably more than it should be. That's why we'll probably never see an affordable Saturday Night Live release, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, music is an expensive thing when you do it and get those rights. I was surprised that they were able
to see a complete series of MTV music videos.
Yeah.
Because most of them are on the Mike Judge collection. But in any case, let's wrap this up here. Unless you feel like we've missed anything with either one of these features, is there anything else that you gentlemen want to say about either one of these two films?
I'm good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's all the time we have for today, folks. So I'm going to go over to you, Brandon, and ask you where you're from and what you do.
Well, Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. We're a channel that talks about physical media, shows the joys of physical media, and just in general has a good old time with our physical media. So we have various types of things and shows on the program, and currently up to matter of fact, we have something new every day of the week. Monday through Friday, we have a show on the channel. So check us out. There's always something new on the daily. And if you want to know more, check us out tonight at Moonside Movies Galore as we talk about film.
You forgot the movie, didn't you? Okay.
The film that we are going on about, folks, before I go over to Jake, is actually called Devil's Pass. So stay tuned for that. Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, I'm Kodabuki Jake. I'm also here in Central Virginia, and I frequently guest on Septum Sim vs. the World. We have a very fun vlogcast this week where we talk at length about the highs, the lows, and the just plain weirdness of the current Oscar nominations. And we have some videos coming up that we are looking forward to, so we can talk a little bit more after the main show. In the meantime, yeah, I'm also a lover of physical media and movies, DVDs, all that fun stuff. And yeah.
Alrighty. And my name is David Struggy. I run Inside Moves Galore, but I also run it with these guys and a few more. So stay tuned for, like I said, a thrilling discussion with Devil's Pass. And I also run Delusions of Grandeur, which is a site where I post videos of my video collection as I get them, or at least when I can get to going on about them. And I also do some film reviews. I just posted 3 of them to the channel. I have not posted them to our regular page yet, but you can check those out momentarily if you so choose. So hopefully I can get some more video collection videos out once I can find out how to convert them, and get them out to you so that you can see what more I have in my collection, and so on and so forth. I definitely have the same kind of reviewing going on that Brandon is going through with Amhedemia Productions. So bear with me while I get ready to go on about my own thoughts on those films as well. So thank you so much for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. And like, share, and subscribe. Hopefully you've enjoyed our ramblings on these 2 features. It's been a while since we've done some Japanese films, and I'm glad we got to go on about one of my favorite cheesy films. So
it's a while yet before we do some more Japanese stuff.
Probably, but
they're not the same, Dave. They're not the same.
No, they're not.
Yeah, I keep on hearing these aren't the droids you're looking for. But in any case, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to have some more fun for you later on tonight. Thank you so much.